we've come a long way in actually quite a short space of time. And you can't rush these things. You've got to do it the right way.
Hey, how are you? Welcome back to Outside the Box. This is the brand new podcast all about women in sport. It's Becky Eyes with you, and we're back with my next guest to hang out. We're going to share some stories, offer help and advice to anyone thinking of wanting to get into working in sport. We're going to play a few games, you know, the ones that you know and love, and we're just going to find out how my guest has got to where they have today. And today's guest, I think you are going to be super interested in, because I'm joined by the head of women's football at Base Soccer. Georgie Hodge is here.
Hi, everyone.
Yay! Here she is. How are you doing? You all right?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
No, well, thank you for coming on. I'm super interested to talk to you. I think you're going to offer a whole different perspective from the previous guests that we've had, because you were completely the other side of football. So let's get into it. Let's break down exactly what your job is. So Base Soccer is who you work for, and that is one of the biggest football agencies in the world, isn't it?
Yeah, we like to think so. We've been going for a good 20 years, and our chairman was one of the first ever registered agents in football. So in terms of learning from the best, all the agents who work for Base are in such an amazing position. And for me, coming into Base, when was it, about 5 years ago, one of the main things for me was learning from the best in the industry, and working with people who shared the same values and respected the game in a way that probably quite a few don't, particularly in men's football. So for me, it was really partnering up with an agency that instilled those values and meant that I could work in the way that I wanted to moving forward. So yeah, Base has been an unbelievable platform for me. And also it's worth mentioning, we were acquired by CAA, which is Creative Artists Agency, who are probably renowned for being the biggest commercial agency in the world across music, film, TV and sport. Now having the support of the best in the business has been, you know, an unbelievable start from the acquisition.
And your job is you're head of women's football, which is a super exciting time to have that job title, it has to be said. But what exactly does that entail, head of women's football?
So I manage everything on the pitch and off the pitch. So on the pitch would be club negotiations, contract negotiations, transfers, scouting, finding new players, signing new players to represent, and then representing them.
This sounds, I don't know how, like, we always say, oh, there's not enough hours in the day. Literally, that can't be truer for you. There's so many aspects to being not only a football agent, but also a head of women's football, like a whole organisation. So this is going to be awesome to get into this. But thank you for coming on. Now, the main reason why I wanted to do this podcast in the first place was because I get a lot of questions as a presenter, just being like, oh, how do you do that? How do you work in sport? And I just thought, you know what, I want to, sort of expose, for want of a better word, the opportunities for women that are now there in sport, and more specifically football, because that's the area that you and I work. But do you find, being a female football agent, you are still in a minority?
Definitely, yeah. Like you, I get asked a lot what I do, how can I get into it, where did you start? I'm always wanting to answer those questions, but like you say at the start, it's a 24/7 job. And there's so many people that I've probably missed out on being able to tell them how to get into it. So doing something like this is really important, and I'm glad to help expose our jobs, because there's not enough women working in sport, and we need to educate people who A, want to get in sport, but B, educate and expose our job roles for those who don't even know that they exist.
Right. And that's a really interesting point. And we want to make it known that these jobs are accessible to everyday people.
Yeah.
Like, you and I are no different from anybody else that walks down the street. It's just we found a way somehow to get to the jobs that we want to do. And as I say, there is so much opportunity. So let's start, actually. Let's talk about your journey into sports management. When did your love for sport and probably more specifically football start? Because you used to play, didn't you?
Yeah, I played, not at the level that I would have liked to. But I played football from a young age, and I stopped when I was about 15 to the age of, well, till I went to uni. I moved schools, and I went to a school where probably at the time they didn't necessarily agree with women playing contact sport, and there were members of staff that were really encouraging women to play football. So there were positives as well. But to be honest, I was at an age where I wasn't too fussed about playing. Annoyingly, looking back, I should have carried it on. But I started playing again when I went to uni and really just fell back in love with the game. And I knew that I studied at Oxford Brookes University, and it was a combined course of sports and coaching combined with media, communication and culture, which kind of worked out really well. And
that's a great combination, isn't it?
But when I did that course, I still had no idea that this sort of role was available in sport. I thought it would be, I can either go present on TV or I can be a sports teacher. Like I felt like we were all quite narrow-minded in terms of the opportunities that were out there. And I think it's really important that we let people know that there are jobs outside of being a sports teacher or
outside the norm.
Yeah,
I think that's the thing. People have this perception of we must go into a normal job. It's like, what do you class as a normal job these days?
Yeah.
I think, if we can educate people into the wider perspective here of how many jobs there are available. And as you said, when you left university, you just were expecting to go into that. So how did you then manage to sort of not?
I got a job outside of uni with a sports social network, which was a startup company. I guess the easiest way to describe it nowadays would be that it was the social network for sports fans to connect through sport. And we had a number of sporting ambassadors who would use the platform. And part of my role was to bring on new athletes to use the product and also endorse it. And we had a number of different athletes across the board, from football to basketball in the NBA to ice hockey to badminton to netball. And it was a really great starting point for me because it meant that I was exposed to not only athletes but agents. And in order to speak to athletes these days, you have to go through an agent. But for me, whenever it was coming up against a female athlete, there was no agent, and I couldn't quite work out why it was so difficult to get hold of a male athlete, but I could get a number of a female athlete within 10 minutes.
Interesting.
It was so easy. And coming out of that job, I wanted to explore that and see if there was a way to work within the women's football space, combining my love of football and noticing that gap in the market. That's the space that I wanted to go and look into. So following that job, I'd met quite a few connections in the agency world, and I shadowed a couple of agents for a year or so and learnt the tricks of the trade.
And how did you get to do that shadowing? Did you just ask? Did you send emails and ask?
Asked. And that's,
just put yourself out
that's
there.
how you have to do it. If you don't ask, you do not get.
Networking as well, isn't it? It's important.
100%, especially in football. You spend your time networking and speaking to people. You never know what opportunity is going to come of it. Be nice to everyone. I don't think there's enough people who are nice in this game, and reputation is everything. And as much as you're representing these footballers as well, they're representing you too. So it's really important that you associate yourself with the right people in the game as well. Learning off a couple of agents in that year or so was really key to just learn the basics. And I started working in men's football because there was no one in women's football to look to.
It's the only thing that was available.
So it was my only option. But once I did that, I really started to think, okay, this is what I want to do. I need to work for an agency because it wasn't something that I felt I could do on my own at that point. I worked part-time for the first few years, which I don't think many people know. I got a job at Barclays in Canary Wharf and worked sort of in the marketing team. You know, I made sure I was in touch with the Barclays team who were working with the likes of Women in Football, and I've still got a great relationship with them. So it's all worked out. But I did.
When this pops up actually a little bit in terms of a recurring thing, you've just got to be open-minded enough to go and be like, okay, this isn't exactly doing what I want to do, but I can see that this could benefit me. And I'm going to take the time to do this alongside something else.
Yeah, well, ultimately, we all need to make money. But then it got to a point where I was like, okay, this is really picking up now. I think the Euros were coming up. The opportunities that were coming up for the players that I already represented were increasing. The profile was just building. And I thought, right, I need to go into this full time now, because if I don't, someone else will. Yeah. And I want to be at the forefront of it. I want to be the best at what I do. You know, I want to learn, and this was the time to do it. At that point, I went full time with bass.
This is the first time that Georgie sat down for more than 10 minutes probably since that day. Did you feel though at that time you were taking a leap of faith, or were you just so focused on being like, this is going to work? And as you said, I want to be the forefront of this.
Yeah, no, I never questioned it, because I knew it was always the plan. I would have loved to have done it full time from the start.
So when did this role of head of women's football at base become a thing?
I guess as I built the profile within the company and added new players to the roster, I guess it just became clear that was part of the company that I was going to help build and run.
Yeah.
And although it's still not as many of us on that side as there are on the men's side, the support that we've had internally has been unbelievable. And as the profile of women's football's grown, obviously the interest has grown so much. So I'm constantly getting calls from colleagues saying, I've heard of this player here, I've heard of this player here. So everyone's always really keen to get involved and help where possible. But I've certainly tried to make sure that we work at the very top level. I don't want to be one of those agents that has 50 clients and isn't able to manage them all.
Yeah.
You want to make your players feel like they're the only client you have.
Yeah.
And you've got time for them. A smaller roster is really important for me.
How proud are you to lead head of women's football?
Very. Yeah, very. I don't think about it too often, to be honest. Just get on with it and do it. It's a passion, it's a love. I don't feel like it's a job. And I think I count myself very lucky to be in that position. But there's still so much to be done in the game, and I hope to be one of the main drivers to get it to where it needs to be. And there's a lot of people doing amazing things in women's football, and it's just really important that everyone champions each other and really make sure that we go in the right direction and educate people on these job roles, because the more people that do what we do, the bigger the bigger and the better. Yeah,
absolutely. Is there a typical day in the life of a football agent? No. I guess no 2 days are the same, are they?
No.
And are you...
Oh, well, I must say lockdown's been quite similar.
Well, of course, yeah. So, we have had... in terms of 2020, when this year started out, I don't think anyone could have predicted the way that this all went. But yeah, I guess your phone is constantly 24/7. You need to be on call any time of the day or night, really, with your job.
Exactly.
I love that you're just like, yep, that's pretty much how it goes down. I don't even think about it anymore.
It's fine. It is what it is. It's what you sign up to. You know you're going to be doing that. But like I said, if you love it, it's
not really a thing, is it?
Not really. It doesn't bother me that much.
You just
Unless I'm mid-movie on a Sunday night and someone's bugging me.
Georgie has put her phone on airplane mode to do this podcast as well. So we'll see how many messages she gets when she turns it back on. Right, throughout these podcasts, Georgie, I decided to switch up the game a minute. We all love sport. Sport is very competitive. So I've decided to play some games throughout this podcast, and you will acquire a total at the end of this. Now, who's leading at the minute? Ish, isn't she?
Oh, I've got to beat her.
Alicia Ferguson has got 27 points from Jules Breach, who has 26, from Phil Neville, who has 25.
Okay.
So those are the top three. You're aiming for a total of 27 throughout this whole podcast. It's just bragging rights you're playing for here. Okay. But as you said,
it's complete bragging rights.
Complete bragging rights. So look, this first game, I'm going to play you a YouTube clip. So what I've done, hopefully, is thought, I mean, outside the box, excuse, I know that's what the podcast is called, and I've put together like a little montage, and I just want you to have a look at this video and tell me what are all the things in common in this video. Here we go.
Nikita Paris, the top scorer in World Cup